We're going to talk about strength training as older adults and why we should be doing it. And I thought I'd start with just kind of showing why it is so important and how few of us are actually meeting the guidelines that we should be trying to achieve. So if we look at the World Health Organization's physical activity guidelines, a lot of people know a little bit about the aerobic targets which we should be aiming for. So there's 150 minutes of moderate intensity exercise or 75 minutes of vigorous intensity exercise. Now, moderate intensity exercise refers to if you get yourself out of breath, but you would be able to maintain a conversation, but you're out of breath enough that you don't really want to, but you could do. That's moderate intensity exercise. And that would be your target is 150 minutes within the week. Now, if you're working harder and you get to the point where actually you couldn't maintain a conversation because you're so out of breath, you would have crossed over into that vigorous intensity exercise. And because you're working harder, you only have to do 75 minutes per week. And it can be a combination of the two there. In terms of muscle strengthening, not a lot of people know they actually include muscle strengthening in the guidelines. And it says that everyone should be doing at least 2 sessions of muscle strengthening. But that's actually for the guidelines aimed at 18 to 65-year-olds. They've actually got another set of guidelines for those aged 65 and over that saying we should actually be doing even more. So we should be doing 3 sessions of muscle strengthening per week. So that's sometimes counter to popular belief that as you get older, you should maybe take it a little bit easier and start to do a little bit less. And the guidelines are recognizing that no, actually, if you're not working strength, you're going to be losing it. And it's even more important that we kind of keep the strengthening in there. So yeah, rather than 2 sessions a week, ideally, we're going to try and get closer to that 3 sessions a week. There's a bit of a study that looked at how many people are actually meeting these guidelines. And they found that not even a quarter of people were meeting the guidelines for both the aerobic and the muscle strengthening combined. They found that another 22.7% were doing the aerobic, but only another 6.8% were just meeting the muscle strengthening without the aerobic. So if we take that 6.8%, add it to the 24.2%, that's not even a third of adults are doing enough muscle strengthening. And they're also a bit ambiguous of what they class as muscle strengthening. They include quite a few activities in there, which I would argue not all of them necessarily class as muscle strengthening, because I'll come on to it in a second. But in order to build strength as an outcome of an exercise, you have to push to a certain level of intensity. And some of the things they include in there, I would say that they don't quite class as muscle strengthening. So if that was a third of people with that ambiguous kind of definition, there's even less. So again, I put it down to a quarter of people actually doing enough in terms of muscle strengthening, which is why it's so important that I'm trying to kind of spread the message that it's safe to do if we do it in the right way, and it's going to have so many benefits, and I'll come on to those in a second. I just wanted to get a bit of an idea about who is in the room and kind of what stage people are at. So got number 1, I know that I would benefit from being stronger, but I have no idea where to start. Number 2, I have lifted weights in the past and I've got some experience with it, but I've had a gap and I worry that starting again will flare up an old injury and I'm not sure if it's the best thing to do. Number 3, I've tried following YouTube workouts or online programs, but I just struggle to keep up, or there's always exercises I can't do and I just feel like what's the point of doing it if I can't do it all? And number 4, I have osteoarthritis, osteoporosis, chronic fatigue, some form of other condition, and you're not really just sure whether it's safe to do or not. So yeah, if you go just to chat, just either the number that resonates with you the most, or you can maybe, there's a couple of them that stand out for you there, but I'd love to kind of get an idea. If you're here because you're really an experienced lifter, you were hoping that you might get a few subtle technique changes that will get you your personal best lift, this probably isn't going to be the webinar for you. This is very much aimed at anyone at the beginner stage that is wanting to learn how to take those steps to get started. And I'm trying to reassure you that it's good to get going. Good. So you've probably got some objections to starting strength training, and that's kind of stopping you taking those first steps. So what I wanted to do, I've got 4 of the biggest objections or most common objections that I tend to hear. And I just want to go over each of those, try and counter them and use some stories of other people that had similar objections that have managed to overcome them and feel the benefits of strength training. So the first one I hear a lot of is, I'm too old to get started now. Many people think that, if you've got to 50, 60, 70 and you've never done this before and you've not had any experience, that they almost feel it's stupid to think that they could get started with it now. And I'm here to reassure you that's definitely not the case. I do get it is a fear and it is something that might stop you, but I just wanted to use the story of Phil, who he came in. So I realised I've not properly introduced myself. So I'm Chris, a physiotherapist, and within my practice, that's where that photo is taken. I have a particular interest in introducing resistance training to older adults. And Phil was someone who came to see me with knee pain for his arthritic knee and had no intention of doing any strength training. He'd never done any form of regular sport or exercise since school, he said. So yeah, since school, he maybe slight sporadic swimming at one point. He did a little bit of tennis on and off at one point, but never anything that he stuck to. So yeah, he loved the garden, but his knee was stopping him from doing things in the garden, and that's kind of what prompted him to come in. So through treating his knee, we incorporated some strengthening exercises, and that naturally evolved into kind of doing more gym-based work. And then Phil continued to see me since he saw me before lockdown, obviously a bit of a break with the lockdowns, but has continued since. And say 76 when he first came in, he's just turned 80, and he can deadlift now 65 kilograms and he can squat 55 kilograms. And for someone himself who only weighs about 63 kilograms, that's a fantastic achievement. And up until the age of 75, he'd never done anything of this before. And the positives as well, he's noticed that is his knee is no longer bothering him. It's something he's aware of still. I'm not going to say it completely alleviates it, but he is doing well, and he's doing all the jobs in the garden that he wanted to. Objection number 2 is, I have a chronic condition or injury, and it's completely reasonable to think that if you do something like resistance training or lifting weights, then you may well have a flare up of those injuries. And it's definitely something we've got to be aware of, because if we try and ask that joint or the condition to do too much too soon, there is a risk of a bit of a flare up. But if we give the body time to react and adapt to the loads that we're putting through it, you generally find that's we can not only get started, but we can often reduce the symptoms of that condition. So I just wanted to introduce you to Carol. So Carol is one of the founding members of the Stronger for Life course. She, similar to Phil, had ongoing knee pain. Now, she had some experience with lifting in the past and worked with a personal trainer, but due to a change of gym ownership, she had to she basically had to give that up, and she had a bit of a break from it. And she started the Stronger for Life course about 8 weeks ago, and she told me on our last group call that the last 2 weeks she's not had any knee pain, she's not had to take any pain relief. Prior to that, she was quite reliant on paracetamol and ibuprofen to manage her knee pain. So yeah, another one there. She's also found that her sleep has dramatically improved as well. Then we've got Jan, again, another founding member of the Stronger for Life course. Since menopause, Jan found that she wasn't able to sleep throughout the night and was always waking every night and had interrupted sleep, and that really affected her energy levels throughout the day. Now, again, she's really active, does yoga, plays tennis, always doing stuff in the garden. And the only change she's made in the last 8 weeks is by adding resistance training into her weekly routine. And for the last few weeks, she said she's now started to have nights where she's sleeping through the night and having 8-9 hours sleep uninterrupted. And she said it's just heaven, and she feels like she's got so much more energy during the day. And that's not something that I think either of us were actually thinking. It wasn't her main driver for coming to join the course, but it's one of the main benefits she's taken from it. And again, some people with chronic fatigue think that they don't want to exert themselves too much in case it really wipes them out, but actually it's really given her more energy by doing this. I can't guarantee that's the case for everyone, that you'll completely alleviate your pain or start sleeping through, but the point is they're not reasons not to start. And if we treat those conditions with respect as you get started, you can avoid the flare-ups that often people are worried about, or the real exhaustion. Objection number 3, lifting weights is dangerous. And again, really understandable fear that when you look at people in the gym and lifting weights, and they might have 80 kilos on their back, 100 kilos, it does look really daunting and really scary. And the point is, resistance training doesn't need to be heavy weights to start with. For some people, body weight will be enough. And I'll come on to the intensity required to build muscle strength. But for some people, body weight will be enough if you use gravity in the right way. Some people, light weights is fine. Some people, resistance bands is okay. As you progress, you'll then want to keep adding weight and adding resistance. And eventually you might get to the point where we're lifting barbells and things like that. But my counter to that argument is this quote, which I think is brilliant. So it's, if you think lifting is dangerous, try being weak. Being weak is dangerous. Because if we look at loss of muscle strength or mass over time, so it's a process called sarcopenia. So it starts from the age of about 35 and accelerates from the age of 50. The more strength that we lose, if we're not actively trying to build strength, can predispose us to some of the following. So less strength tends to result in less balance, and that can reduce in some falls. Now, if you've got less strength, the chances are your bone density started to reduce as well, and you're more likely to pick up a fracture. Those fractures might need surgeries and some time in hospital, and whatever your recovery time is, you're going to be less active, and sarcopenia can accelerate and kick in further, and eventually it can have an impact and predispose to mortality and death. Sarcopenia, so that loss of muscle strength or mass, is also prevalent with the following conditions. So it's cardiovascular disease, dementia, diabetes, respiratory disease. Now, it could be an argument that if you've got those conditions, that then created the environment for sarcopenia to kick in, and therefore will building strength help. But I think there's probably an element of both, that by having sarcopenia, it created an environment for all those diseases to build. So I think the point is, we know that loss of muscle strength is associated with all those red words on the screen. So if we can build our muscle mass and strength, we're less likely to be affected by those, or less likely to have them in the first place. That ties in with try being weak. Being weaker is more dangerous than actually some of the risks associated with the gym. And if we take time to progress, we really limit the risks and mitigate those. The last objection is, I don't like going to the gym, and I completely get that. The gyms can be busy. You can find that you've got to leave the house, you've got to get there, you've got to park, and then you get there and some of the equipment might not be available. One of the big fears people have is the fear that people might be looking at them and judging them, and that can be quite off-putting. And the one counter I would say to that is that it's rarely the case, and most people in the gym are just really not necessarily too focused, but they're just focused on what they're doing. They're not really kind of looking at what's around them or what anyone else is doing. They're just thinking about what they're doing, what they're lifting, what their next exercise is going to be. And I had a similar thing when, with my son, I took him to one of these baby sensory classes, and I did that each week. And the first week or two, I was pretty self-conscious because it's not my natural thing that I like. I'm not a singer, and trying to sing nursery rhymes and things like that, I felt quite awkward and worried that people might be looking. But when I looked up, every time I looked up, I looked around quickly, and not one single parent was looking at anywhere else but their own child. And they were completely focused on them, and they weren't worried what anyone else is doing. And that suddenly made me feel a lot more comfortable, and I could really kind of engage with the class and with my son and enjoy it at the fullest. And the gym is the same. Is majority of people in that gym haven't even noticed you. They're not looking at you. They're not judging you. So the gym is good if you're happy to go, because you do get access to more equipment. There's staff at hand if you need to ask them a little bit about technique and etc. But if you don't like going to the gym, that's absolutely fine. All of this can be done from home. You may well need a little bit of equipment. you initially might not even need equipment. Rucksack with some heavy bottles of water or some heavy books in might be all the resistance you need to get started, but at some point you'll look at needing equipment, or you might then feel confident enough to come into the gym. But I just wanted to introduce you to Mike. So Mike, he initially, just after lockdowns, went through the ebook and then progressed really well, to the point he was deadlifting about 115 kilos and squatting not too dissimilar. And again, he'd never done any resistance training before, and he's just turned 70 now. But he did all of this from home. So he just used some small weights initially that I think they had some in the garage, and he got some off eBay. And since on his 70th, he said his family's chipped in. They've got him a nice new squat rack, and he's got some more kind of substantial equipment now. But again, it is all from home in his garage, and he's not had to do any of this in the gym, and he's made fantastic progress. So again, all of this can be done from home. This is my mum's living room. So my mum's kind of tagged on with the Stronger for Life course, and I've given her access, and she's got started again. And she's bought these little set of 2, 4, 6 and 8 kilogram kettlebells. In the black bag on the left, there's a set of resistance bands, and then in the back is her gym mat. So she just pulls all that out, does a workout, puts it all back again, doesn't take up much space, effortless to kind of get out, it doesn't take up too much time, and she can do everything from there without having to leave the house. There are 4 of the main objections I hear, and hopefully if you had some of those similar objections, you're starting to realise now that actually adding resistance training is something that is doable, it's possible, and those objections aren't things to hold you back. So now that's the case. So how do I get stronger if you're kind of in that mindset that you know it's possible? So the very first plan stage is going to be this goal planning stage. And it's a lot that people miss. And when I first got into the gym at uni, I had the same thing. I didn't really know what I wanted to get from the gym. I just thought I should be going, and I wouldn't really plan anything. And I just walk in, and my plan was to turn up to the gym 2-3 times a week. And when I got there, I might see, oh, that bit of equipment's free, I'll try that, or he's doing that, I quite like the look of that, I'll give that a go. And that was about as much planning as I had, and I didn't have a plan for the session, let alone for the weeks and months to come. And if you don't have a plan, particularly if the gym is something you've never really done before, you're probably your short-term motivation is gonna wane if you don't feel you're making progress to a goal. And the goal should be a little bit more specific than, I just want to feel stronger, or I want to be healthier. Because again, it's difficult to know where you are without defining what being stronger or healthier are. It's hard to know where you are on the journey towards a goal. So again, if you can't see the progress you're making, you tend to give up with it. And that leads me back to Mike. And when Mike initially started going through the ebook, and he's now part of the Stronger for Life course, he had the goal of, he basically was struggling a little bit of wrist pain and knee pain. And he's got 4 grandchildren, and he found that he couldn't enjoy his time with them. And he's an active person. He's always done fell running, mountain biking, and he couldn't fully enjoy the time with his grandchildren. That really bothered him. So when he got into the strength training, it was with the goal of being able to have more time with him. And you might be confused by the bouncy castle and how that's relevant. But what he said is, after he'd been going through the program for a while and feeling a lot stronger, it was his grandson's 4th birthday party. And rather than just watch from the sideline, he was on that bouncy castle with them, diving around, wrestling with them, and he had no wrist pain, no knee pain, and he could fully enjoy that moment. And that was as a result of being stronger. And he admits that strength training isn't something that he naturally enjoys or looks forward to. So without that kind of goal in mind, he recognizes that he probably wouldn't have continued with it. So it's really important to have that. Good. So now we've got a goal in place. It's worth noting what muscle strength is. So muscle strength is the ability for a muscle to produce a peak force. So if we want to change the muscle's ability to produce a peak force, we have to work towards the top end of it to increase it. If you just work with lighter weights that feel safe, just because you're doing an exercise with weights doesn't automatically make it a muscle strengthening exercise. And it's the same way as if you want to increase the distance you run. So if you're already running 10K and you want to run a marathon, if you only run about 2 to 5 kilometers every day, you're not going to change the point of 10K onwards. You have to push up to 10K and then push it a little bit further. And that's how the training programs work to nudge you up to the marathon distance over time. It's the same with weight. To get stronger, we need to find out what your strength is, work just underneath that initially, and then start to add a bit of resistance. So you're starting to push into that a little bit. So you're always trying to push slightly out your comfort zone. So in order to do that, we need to start to push the muscles, or we need to train to fatigue or train to failure. And they're interchangeable terms, training to fatigue or training to failure. And what that means is if you're doing a certain number of repetitions, so say we're going for 15 repetitions of an exercise, the 15th that you do should pretty much be the last one you could manage. And if you could, so if you did 15, last one you can manage, if I asked you to do a 16th and you tried it and the muscle just couldn't do it, you would have got it perfectly. You would have trained to fatigue. And it's that point, the recovery after that, where the muscle gets stronger. If you stopped at 15 because you hit an arbitrary figure and really you could have done the 5, 10 repetitions quite easily, then you haven't trained to fatigue. And whilst it's always beneficial to move the body, in terms of trying to build strength, you're not going to get any strength from that because you haven't pushed quite hard enough. Initially, you're not in I don't want to say go rush and go out and try and hit fatigue straight away. What I normally suggest is you're going to start to try and get familiar with the exercises and the movements you do first, and we'll come on to this exercise selection in a second. And then you want to add a little bit of weight and resistance. And if you get to the end of, say, 15 and you feel like you could do some more, next time you add a bit more weight and add a bit more till eventually you get comfortable training to fatigue. And then that kind of brings us up to these rep ranges. So the reason I've said 15 repetitions there is the science shows that if you reach muscle fatigue anywhere within 15 repetitions of an exercise, you'll get some strength as a result. You'll also get some increased size of your muscles. So strength, the rate of strength increasing and the rate of the size increasing doesn't necessarily correlate, and they go together. You can kind of separate those slightly. And then there's also some endurance you'll get. So if you want to be a bit more efficient with your time and get more strength than the size and the endurance, if we can actually increase the weight and resistance you're using so that the fatigue point or failure point happens about the 5 repetitions or less, then you're going to get a lot of strength, bit of size and a bit of endurance. Whereas if you did it at the 8 to 12, you'd get more size with some strength and a bit of endurance. And if you did it at the 12 to 15, you'd mainly get endurance, some size and a little bit of strength. And given that strength is primarily what we're here for, and we know how important muscle strength is, eventually we want to get closer to pushing to fatigue at 5 repetitions. But again, comfortable with the movement patterns, get comfortable pushing to fatigue at 15, gradually add a bit of weight, maybe bring it down to 12 repetitions. A couple of weeks later, add a bit more weight, get it down to 10. And over time, and I'd say at a bare minimum, I'd say 3 months is you want to get it down to the kind of 5 repetitions. But for some people, that might take longer. As long as we know that's what we're aiming for, and we're aiming to progress over time rather than staying safe, that's kind of a nice kind of routine that we want to build. Then we've got the exercise selection, and it's a little bit tricky to kind of go through the exercise selection in a short webinar because there are so many different types of exercises out there. I tend to focus a little bit more on what you might hear of compound lifts, which I call these functional movement patterns. So there's 7 of these. So there's a squat, which is the action of sitting down and standing up. Hip hinge, where you bend at the waist. So an example would be a deadlift in the gym, but it's what you do to pick something up off the floor. Lunge is where one foot's in front of the other and you bend both knees down to get down to the floor. Push, you might push something away from you, or you might push yourself away from something. So a push-up would be you pushing yourself away from the floor. Pull, you might pull something towards you. So like this lady's pulling that red band towards her, or you might pull yourself towards an object like a pull-up. So you're pulling yourself up to the bar. Rotation is rotation of the body. And then gait and carry is carrying something with weight. So you emulating carrying the shopping or a heavy watering can or pushing a wheelbarrow forwards. The reason I love these movements, they work multiple muscle groups at the same time to achieve these movements that are kind of things we can imagine doing on a day-to-day basis, and we can see it's easy to see how it's going to benefit you. But there's also isolation exercises where you just work one muscle at a time, and they could be something like a bicep curl, where you hold a weight and you try and bend your elbow to lift your hand up to your shoulder, and then you lower it down again. And that is just working one muscle at a time, which again, absolutely fine. Great. It's often good to have a bit of a combination of those in there. If you're kind of thinking, where can I get started? If you're just doing one workout and you just pick 4 exercises, these 4 in red are quite a good starting point. So you could pick a squat. So you could literally just sit down to a chair, stand back up again. If that feels easier, you can hold a bit of a weight. Hip hinge, if the thought of kind of a deadlift type motion's a bit daunting, you could start off on the floor, on your back, bend your knees to 90 degrees with your feet flat on the floor, and you can lift your hips up into the air and then lower them back down again. And that will be hinging at the hip. Push, you could do some form of push-up. So you could either full push-up or off your knees, or you could even just stand up against a wall and lean into it and then push or lower your chest towards the wall and push it away from you again. And then a pull, you might need a band like this or bungees of some form, but you can pull something that's got resistance towards you and then reach your arms back out again. But if you want a bit more help with the exercises and where you might go with that, then the ebook that I talked about before, so nevertoiltolift.com, in the top right hand corner there's a start here button. You'll be prompted and you can download the ebook completely free of charge, and that has got some more ideas about the exercises within there. Then it comes on to consistency. So you kind of heard me say that from that process of getting confident in the movement patterns and getting to the point where you can hit muscle fatigue at 5 repetitions, I said at bare minimum 3 months. And part of that is for a muscle to make a change physiologically, it takes about 3 months for that to happen. So that's not to say you won't notice any improvement within the 3 months, because initially you've got muscle strength already. Sometimes your brain just doesn't know quite how to utilize that in the most efficient way. So the more exercises you do, that whole confidence building stage is your brain learning to use the muscles in the most efficient way. And that does result in you then producing a bit more power and force. So you'll feel some benefits straight away. But once your brain's worked out the most efficient way of using the muscle strength you've already got, you often hit what you hear people refer to as this plateau, where you don't see as much improvement as you've got at the start. And that's where you really do need to stay consistent, because it does take about 3 months onwards for those muscles to start to physically change within the muscle itself. And that's if you're consistently doing it 2 or 3 times a week. So some people just hope that they can start doing a few exercises for a couple of weeks, and then they can kind of dip in and out every few weeks whenever they need to, and they're going to suddenly see themselves get stronger. It is something that once you kind of get in that habit of doing at least 2 sessions, ideally 3, you then want to keep that up. And then as you get stronger, that will motivate you further, and hopefully it's something to keep up ongoing from there. But yeah, consistency is very important. And then the last thing is progressions, because a lot of people forget to progress. You've taken a step, you've pushed yourself out of your comfort zone, which is a big challenge in itself. But once you've done that and you've started working with a weight and working with a resistance, and you've got comfortable pushing to fatigue at 15 repetitions, often people stay there and they carry on with that. And whereas it may have in week 1 pushed you to fatigue at 15 repetitions, if you continue doing that a few times a week up until say week 3 or 4, you'll suddenly realize that when you get to 15 repetitions, if you're honest with yourself, you could probably done about another 5, 6, 7 more quite easily, which means you're now not getting any stronger. So we have to add a bit of weight to try and bring that fatigue point down to 15. And you could just stay there where you consistently just work at 15 repetition maxes, we call it. But then ideally, like I say, we would progress even further. So then add a little bit more weight on or resistance on, and then we get down to 10 repetitions or 12 repetitions, then 10, then 8, then 6, then 5, etc. So yeah, if exercises start to feel easy, just because you're doing an exercise with weight doesn't make it a strengthening exercise. You do need to start to try and make it a little bit harder again. The progression is a key step that, again, a lot of people miss. So as a recap, if you want to build strength, the first starting point is really establishing some clear goals so that you can really maintain your motivation as you go forwards. You're then going to select some exercises, and it's not as important what the exercises are. It's more important the intensity you perform them at. So don't get too hung up with the exercises. It's just finding some exercises that you either kind of find online by searching or look at the ebook, or whether you do join Stronger for Life later. But it's picking some exercises that you can start with and then progress from, and then you're going to get comfortable training to fatigue with them, stay consistent at training fatigue, and then progress over time to ideally get that fatigue point to 5 repetitions. So I've repeated that a few times now, but it's really important there. But the other really important thing is we don't want to rush, because as we said before, there's certain objections you've had that will have stopped you wanting to start in the first place. And if we don't respect those, whether it's knee pain, whether it's fatigue, whether it's just the confidence in general or confidence in being in the gym, if we push things too quickly, that's when injuries and pains and things can happen. So we do want to take it slowly. There's no rush to get through this. You can take your own time doing it, but it's just knowing that we do want to progress at some point, and you can take those progressions as slowly as you need, but as long as you're making steps forwards, that's the important thing. So I just want you to have a little think about what was the most helpful thing that you've learned today and what the kind of key takeaway from that. And if you want to, you can put that in the chat, or it's something you can just keep to yourself, or stick in the comments. If you're watching this on the replay, you can put it in the comments below this. But if you're happy, I just wanted to take that chance to just introduce you to the Stronger for Life course and let you know a little bit more about that, and if it's something you might be interested in. Like I say, up until this point, all of that you can combine with the ebook and you can still take steps forwards. But if you wanted a bit of more interactive way with a little bit of access to me on a weekly basis, then this might be something you're interested in. So I've had this running for about 8 weeks now. I've had a small group of 5 members, plus my mum who's tagged along as well, that have been working through the course and been incorporating a program in one that sort of 2 to 3 times a week that they've been doing their exercises. So what it is, it's an online course and community. It's going to help you plan a strengthening program around your individual needs. So what it's not is me doing kind of YouTube videos that you try and follow. There's none of that at all. There'll be some of me demonstrating exercises that you can select from, but there's nothing where you're trying to keep up with me or keep up with anyone else, because that would just be too difficult when everyone's coming in with their own individual start point. It's more about all the knowledge you need to build your program. And then once you've got a program that you can then progress from, you can really build your strength. That will help you move more confidently, and ultimately it's going to allow you to look forward to a more active future. I've kind of broken it down into kind of 3 phases within the course. So we've got the preparatory phase. We've kind of touched on a couple of bits already, but we go a lot more in depth into the goal planning. And that's something that can, again, help you on with the weekly calls that we do. Then there's going to be introduction to some baseline tests. So there's some that you do at the start, repeat at 6 weeks, 12 weeks, and every 6 weeks as you go through it. And those baseline tests are really helpful, because whilst you might see some of the weights you lift improve, having the strength improve as well to improve your scores on the baseline test really helps, again, keep that motivation, and it shows that you're making progress in other areas that will kind of carry over into everyday life. Whilst you're in the preparatory phase, because the course you can work through in your own pace as quickly or slowly as you've got time for, I don't want you to kind of wait till you get to the end before actually kind of starting your routine. So I get you started with a body weight routine to get your confidence going with some of the exercises, and that's something you can do in your own time. And then whilst we're in the preparatory phase, I go through some of the equipment and introduce you to that. And again, initially you might not need any equipment at all. It could just be rucksacks with bottles of water. One of my favorites are the bottles of Screen Wash of 5 litres. And we know a litre is a kilogram, so 5 litres is 5 kilograms. It's got a nice handle already. You can have one in each hand, and that's 10 kilos worth of weight that you can start to work out with, or you can put them in, both of them fit nicely in a rucksack. And again, that works well from there. But at some point as you progress, you're probably going to want to get some equipment, and I talk you through some of the equipment options that are available to you, or if you go to the gym, some of the gym equipment that you might want to use. I'll go through a few more important principles, such as the training to fatigue, and then there's reps in reserve and a few other kind of gym-based language that you might hear But it's really important that you understand the principles, because if you understand why you're being asked to do things, you'll then have more motivation to continue. Whereas if you sort of just blindly kind of following something, sometimes you lose motivation because you don't understand why you're doing it. And again, I give another option of a resistance band routine that you might want to add in whilst you're going through the planning phase. Then we move into the program planning phase. So you get a more in-depth look at those movement patterns I talked about. And then I give 3 exercise variations for each of those movement patterns. So I go, one's a suggested exercise, one's a regression option, and then one is a progression option. So the regression one's useful because if you've got knee pain or something else that limits you, it gives you a slightly easier version that you can get started with to eventually progress on later on. And if you find that you can't make any of the 3 variations work, rather than being left on your own and feel like you just have to leave that one out, that's where the group calls come in really nicely, because I can then help problem solve with you and try and find other variations that might suit you better. And then within the course, I then will help you input that into your program, and you're going to create a program with 2 alternating workouts that you're then going to work on each week. Which then brings us into the performing phase, where you actually do the workout. So we stop doing the bodyweight one, we stop doing the resistance band routine, and you start doing the program that you've created for yourself around your needs and restrictions, and you get to progress from there. And then I talk you through why it's so important to document your workouts and how to do that. And then I'll go through the planning the progressions and when's a good time to add those progressions in as you go through. And that's kind of over the weeks and months from there. So when you sign up, you'll get invited to log in, and this is on a software that I use called Teachable. So it's a really nice, easy to navigate course platform. So as you log on, you get to a dashboard. It's pretty straightforward, to an obvious where to go. So initially you kind of watch that first lesson, and then it'll prompt you to go on to further lessons, and you'll see that all the lessons are split, or all the content is split into, there's 7 modules, and within each module there's anywhere between 4 and 9 lessons. And each lesson is a small bite-sized chunk video. So you'll see as we kind of look through, the first one's 48 seconds, just a little welcome video. Then it goes to 4 minutes 59, then 5 minutes 22, and then a recap module at 1 minute 11. And then we come on to module 2. So it's minute 10, 4 minutes 2, 2 minutes 23. So it's all small videos. You can watch 1 or 2 at a time, and then you can log off. And then when you come back on, it will let you know exactly where you got to, and then you can start off again from there. When you're in a lesson, you'll see on that right-hand side, it just has a bit of writing above and below, and then you'll have a video. You click play on the video, and that video will start playing. They've all got subtitles on there. And then once you finish that lesson, you just click complete and continue below, or in that top right-hand corner. And on the left-hand side, you'll see the kind of small green circles. The one that's selected has gone to half. That means you're halfway through that lesson. And then once you click complete, that will come up as a solid green circle, and you'll move on to the next lesson. So again, easy to track where you are. If you want to go back to any lesson, you can just scroll through on the left hand side and find the lesson you want to rewatch, and you can watch that again. So in terms of getting access to the course there, it's for today and for the next week. So up until the end of Tuesday, 11:59 GMT, it's £147. So that includes a £50 discount that the price will return next Wednesday back to its previous price. There's a few other bonuses that I'll kind of come on to in a second, but if you're interested in signing up, it's nevertaughttolift.com/course, or I've just, for those of you on the webinar live, I've added in just underneath the video, there's an enroll now button. So if you click that, that will get you through to the sales page. You'll see there's a couple of options. You can either get the course on its own, you can get the course with a one-to-one goal planning call with me, which will be done via Zoom. And that will just help you go through the goal planning stage and adding the exercises in, or any other questions you have or sticking points. And there's also another option for the course, the goal plannings call, and then an additional 12 accountability calls with myself each week, just to kind of keep you on track and go through any questions as they come up. So a few options there for you. Again, just a quick break from my voice again. I'm just going to show you, I introduced you to Jan and Carol earlier. So I'm just going to, so it's a minute long video of the benefits they've noticed from starting the.
Everybody I need. I'm now weightlifting. I'm now weightlifting. I'm now weightlifting. And it's made this and it's made that. I don't know if it makes any difference to them, but I'm just like, well, I'm going to tell them anyway.
Oh, that's great. Thank you.
Well, I think, I feel it has made a difference. It's made a really positive difference for me in things like sleep and just in energy. I can't say I have felt as fatigued since I've really started doing this as I have done in the past. I've had days in the past where I've just been so fatigued. I've hardly had the energy to talk really. And I haven't had anything like that over the last sort of 4 or 5 weeks, which is great.
The pain was reducing in my right leg when I started this, but it's completely gone now. I haven't had paracetamol or ibuprofen for since I went to the lakes a couple of weeks ago.
Even if you just go for the course on its own, you'll also get access to the following. So you're going to get a private Facebook group that is just members of Stronger for Life. That's been really beneficial because people can ask questions in there and I can answer it from my side of things, having worked with people that have these problems, but you can ask people that are also going through exactly the same thing as you at the same time. So that's been really invaluable. I think the thing that really makes it stand out from other courses is those weekly Q&A sessions. So they were kind of clips of those there. Currently, they run on Zoom and they run every Wednesday at 10:30 in the morning. If you ever can't make a call, you can send questions in advance. I'll always answer questions that have been sent in first, and then at the end of the call, I send out a recording to everybody so you can then work from there. But again, you can ask the same questions in the Facebook group. But the weekly calls have been great because not only has it been just questions and sticking points, it's sharing progress. That's what everyone's really enjoyed actually, is the calls more than just as much as the course. You'll also get the lifetime access to the course. So there's no shut off point at any point. If there's any updates, you'll automatically get access to those updates. Some of you may have seen there's an online store where you can get Never Told to Lift t-shirts, hoodies, water bottles, mugs, etc. And you'll get a discount on those products, which I'll share once you're in the group. And then there's a 30-day no questions asked money back guarantee. So if with the course, with the Facebook group and those weekly sessions, I can't help you get started and you don't feel you're getting anything from this and you're just not getting stronger and it doesn't feel you've got the value from this, then I don't want your money. I want to give it back. So I've got that guarantee there. Like I said, I'm confident with the course and with those Q&A sessions, particularly, that I can help you find a starting point. And that's why I've kind of put the Q&A sessions, because I don't want you to ever feel lost and give up with it all. But yeah, if at any point, even on day 30, I won't ask any questions, I'll happily give the refund if you were to ask for one. So that's just a little look into the Facebook group there. So you can just see just at the bottom there, that's where I kind of add some of the group calls, but I will also email them out. And then people are in there asking questions and supporting each other and just sharing progress. Then as you've seen some of the calls, but that's just another screenshot of one of the calls there. So I talked about some of the sort of limited bonuses. So as I've mentioned already, if you buy in the next week, so before the end of Tuesday, you'll get £50 off. After Tuesday, it's going to go back up to its usual price. So at the moment, it's 147. It will then go back up to the 197. The first 3 people to join are going to get a free goal planning session with myself. So that will be a Zoom call, anywhere up to an hour, just to go through any sticking points that you might have. So again, first 3 people to join will get one of those calls. And then if you join by the end of today, you'll get a physical copy of the goal planner, which I'll show you in a second. But as standard, there's a digital form that you can open up on any device from a phone or tablet, and you can go to the gym and you can document your workouts and track and look back through. But quite a few people like the pen and paper version. So some people have printed them off and you can do that, but you end up with quite a few scraps of paper. And this was something that came out of the founding group, that they asked whether I can create this. So I went to printers and I've just printed off the goal planner. So it's got the workout templates there, and then it's got all the kind of goal planning section at the start. So again, you can write this all down, you can take that to the gym, and then every time you go, you can look back what we did last week, look at your notes, and then you can get started straight away. So again, if you buy before the end of today, you'll get one of those completely free. You can always add it on later if you don't go for it now, and that'll be a value of £10, and which includes a postage out. But that pretty much covers everything. So yeah, if you decide to join, you're going to get full lifetime access to the course. You're going to access to the weekly Q&A sessions that I will endeavour to run every week. There might be the odd week I'm on holiday, but even so, I'll try and escape for an hour to do that. You're going to get access to the Facebook group. You're going to get £50 off the regular price if you buy before the end of next Tuesday. Free goal planner if you buy before the end of the day. And if you're one of the first 3 people, you'll get the free call with myself. And then you're going to get discount on any of the Never Taught to Lift products. And I'll share that discount once you've joined. And then the most important thing is to take away the risk. You've got that 30-day, no questions, money back guarantee. So if you're interested, it's nevertooalterlift.com/course, or just click enroll now underneath, and that'll take you straight through to that page where you can buy it. So you generally will need, once you're on that page, you scroll right to the bottom and you'll see the 3 options there. And with that, that brings us to the end of the webinar.